Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Safana, and it's time for another daily dose of Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate spoilers. And oh my goodness, yesterday we had one of the biggest spoiler days of all time, and today, thankfully, we don't have quite that many cards to go over, but we still got some really sweet ones that I'm hyped to talk about, which means we should probably jump right into it, start talking sweet new cards. Before we do, two quick reminders. Number one, to keep up on all the latest spoilers throughout the day, head over to MTGpreviews.com. Number two, if you need to pick up some Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate cards, or really any cards, you can get them from our awesome sponsor, Card Kingdom, over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldfish, and even get a free goldfish sticker. Just let them know you want one in your order notes, and they'll hook you up. Anyway, let's talk Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. First up today, we got a new huge green mythic sorcery in Majestic Creation. So 8 mana says reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the highest mana value of a commander you own on the battlefield or in your command zone, and you may put any number of permanent cards from among them on the battlefield, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So this compares to kind of a Genesis wave, except its X is set. It's always going to be 8 mana, and it's always going to give you cards equal to the highest mana value of one of your commanders. So is this as good as Genesis Wave? And I think the answer in general is going to be no. If you look at decks that play Genesis Wave, it's usually decks that can take advantage of the fact that Genesis Wave is an X spell. Decks that can make tons of mana, Seton and Vhal and Omnath. You just make tons of mana and then put most of your deck into play with the Genesis Wave. Majestic Creation's never going to do that. Although it is worth mentioning, there is a couple of upsides to Majestic Creation. One is, it's always going to be 8 mana, and if your commander is really expensive, it's actually going to be more effective than Genesis Wave. The other upside is, Genesis Wave has a bit of a mana value restriction. Usually you cast it for so much mana it doesn't matter, and you just put all your permanents into play, but if you're casting it for a small amount, like X equal 5 or something, and you hit a 6-drop, you can't actually put it into play. Majestic Creation just lets you put all of your stuff into play no matter what. So I think the cutoff for Majestic Creation is really around 6 mana. If you think about its comparison to Genesis Wave, if your commander costs 5 mana, you cast this for 8, you're going to get to see 5 cards, put some permanents into play. It's basically the same as Genesis Wave, except Genesis Wave also offers additional flexibility. If you get more mana, you can cast it for a higher X. But once you get up to 6 mana commanders, 8 mana commanders, 10 mana commanders, that's where Majestic Creation becomes pretty appealing, especially if you're playing a deck that has a lot of big permanents. So this is a card I definitely consider for like the Dragon. Usually has a lot of expensive dragons. It has a 9 mana commander. You cast this for 8 mana, hopefully put a bunch of dragons into play on the cheap. Or Gishath, that's another one. You got a lot of big dinosaurs in your deck. You got an 8 mana commander. Probably the best home though is maybe Ghalta. Ghalta seems like the dream for this card. A 12 mana commander that you can cheat into play on the cheap anyway, and then this just puts a ton of big green bombs into play. So Majestic Creation, I think this is a card that's for certain decks. It's support for high mana value commanders, which I really like. That's something I want to keep seeing more of, because as we get more and more cheap legends, there's a general feeling, I think, in the commander community that expensive commanders are not very good. Everyone wants efficient commanders you can recast a couple times if they die, even through the command tax, which I think leads to expensive commanders sometimes seeing less play than they should. Cards like this give you a reward for playing expensive commanders, and those are commanders that could use some support. So even though this card, I think in most decks, is going to be a worse Genesis Wave, in the right deck where you have that expensive commander, it could be an all-star that can get a lot of value for just 8 mana. We also have the return of Flumph, a new Flumph, a legendary Flumph in Gluntch the Bestower, a Selesnya 3-drop 0/5 jellyfish with flying, and it says at the beginning of your end step, choose a player. They put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card, and choose a third player to create 2 treasure tokens. So I gotta say, I really love this card flavor-wise. It really exemplifies what Flumps are about. They're kind of the good guys, sharing their knowledge in the D&D world. So this kind of hits it out of the park flavor-wise for a Flumph commander. And this is actually a really sweet style of group hug commander. It reminds me a little bit of Shadrick's Silverquill. When you read Shadrick's, you're like, okay, so I get value, but I got to give an opponent value. But really, because you're in control and you get to choose who gets what, you can kind of break the symmetry on this card. So you play this, and let's say you have one opponent that's, maybe struggling with mana. mana. You can let them draw a card. What's the worst that's going to happen? Maybe you draw them out of their mana screw and get some favor. Maybe an opponent doesn't really have creatures. You can choose them to get the 2+1/+1 counters. And of course, you can always choose the best mode for yourself. If you need mana, make the treasures. If you have a creature you're growing into a Voltron threat, then you put the counters on it. Otherwise, you can always just draw a card. So I like that you have control compared to some other group hug style commanders. And this is certainly a group hug style commander. And this will show up in the 99, I think, of other group hug decks. But compared to like K&T of Melitus or Vhal Explorer Return, one of the problems is they benefit everyone, whether you like it or not. Like if you tap Safana, everyone's going to draw a card, including the person that's ahead at the table, potentially, the arch enemy that you really don't want to benefit. Same with K&T. Everyone's going to get to draw. Everyone gets to do their thing. Sure, you benefit more, so you're still coming out ahead, but sometimes you don't want to give someone a card. You don't want to give someone value, and Gluntch gets around that. It only targets 3 players, so you get to leave someone out. You don't have to benefit the arch enemy at all, and then as we talked about before, you have a lot of control over who gets what mode, so I think this is a really solid group hug commander, because you should be able to benefit more, and you're not going to accidentally be helping out the arch enemies. So Gluntch, if you like group hug decks, seems like a really fun commander, plus flavor all-star with the Flump thing. We also got a pretty interesting dice rolling instant in Wyll's Reversal. 3-mana instant. Choose target spell or ability with 1 or more targets, roll a d20, and add the greatest power among creatures you control. If you get a 1 to 14, you get to choose new targets for the spell or ability. If you get a 15 or more, you get to choose new targets, and then you copy it, and then you get to choose new targets for the copy. So Wyll's Reversal kind of compares to Wild Ricochet, I think is the closest, a little bit cheaper, so also like a upgraded shunt for the most part. The floor is you're getting to change the targets on things, and the ceiling is you're essentially getting a Wild Ricochet at a discount. The only thing is these cards don't really see a ton of play in Commander anymore. Wild Ricochet is one of those cards that like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, you saw in a lot of Commander decks, but they've kind of fallen out of favor. They still do see some play, so I don't think that Wyll's Reversal, even though I think it is solid at what it does, is going to be a new all-star essentially, but I do think it'll show up in some places. It'll probably show up in decks like Erinis that care specifically about copying spells. It's a way to copy a spell, so it's perfect for something like that. The other place we see these spell copying effects like Wild Ricochet and Shunt sometimes is just in mono red decks where it lets you have a pseudo counter spell. You can change the target of a counter spell to itself and fizzle it or whatever. So there's ways you can have this be like your mono red counter spell. So it's possible it'll see play there. The other place I think that Wyll's Reversal is pretty good is in decks that care about rolling dice. Like if your commander is Farid or Vrondris, where you get a benefit every time you roll a die, well, this is just another way to roll a die. And since this mechanic, the rolling a dice mechanic, is relatively new to Magic, there's not a ton of good ways to do it. So in a dice rolling deck in specific, I think this is pretty much an auto include. So Wyll's Reversal, it's good at what it does. I think even its floor, if you low roll, is fine, and its ceiling, if you high roll, is pretty powerful for 3 mana. It's just that it's still just a redirect style spell, and those spells just don't see that much play in Commander anymore. We also got another new background in Shameless Charlatan. 2 mana, legendary enchantment. It's a background, and it says Commander creatures you own have paid 2 and a blue. This creature becomes a copy of another target creature. So remember the backgrounds, kind of like partner. There's certain commanders you can partner these with. Maybe the best one to partner Shameless Charlatan with is Allura Merry Thief. Allura gives you an unblockable commander. Whenever you attack, up to 1 target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn, then you gotta bounce it back to your hand. So the trick here is, well, not only can you have them both in your command zone, but the trick is you can attack with your Allura, and then after it is unblocked and unblockable, you can take and turn it into some big creature with a combat damage trigger or something, or getting a ton of damage. So there's some shenanigans there. Only downside is you'd still be mono blue if you play it this way, and these are your 2 commanders essentially, but that does seem like a fun trick. Could also just be good in the 99 of other evasive commander decks. So you can do the same trick with Titsuku Yumezawa. It's going to be unblockable, then you change it into some huge Eldrazi and get in a ton of damage, or Curdle. The only downside is once you change your commander into another creature, you're not going to be able to change back into your commander. You can change it to another creature. Your commander is still going to be your commander. It's still going to have the ability to pay 2 and a blue to turn into something else, but it's not going to be able to turn back into your commander because you're not going to have a copy of your commander on the battlefield to turn it into. So keep that in mind. You kind of lose your commander, or lose its ability at least when it turns into a new creature, but you can just keep changing into something else every single turn, which is pretty sweet. So same with Charlatan. I mean, it sounds fun. Turning your commanders into different creatures is a really cool ability. We'll see how strong it ends up being. Speaking of backgrounds, we also got Master Chef, 3 mana background. It's a green one. It says commander creatures you own have this creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter, and other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. This one seems designed to work with Lizelle and also Lulu, these background commanders that specifically care about counters. Like Lizelle puts extra counters on things, so your Master Chef is going to take and give it extra counters, give your other stuff extra counters. Lulu also cares about counters, plus green-white is a good counter synergy color. So you get all your doubling season effects and lots of +1/+1 counter stuff. So I think these are the most obvious pairings if you want to have the Master Chef background in your command zone. On the other hand, this seems reasonable in the 99 as well in some sort of counter deck like Hamas or Kadama or Shishiro or Atraxa. Like, once you get this down, as long as you can keep your commander on the battlefield, every creature is going to come into play with a +1/+1 counter, which means everything's going to be modified for Kadama or Shishiro. You're going to be able to proliferate everything with your Atraxa. You're going to get all these discounts with your Hamas. So it actually seems like a pretty powerful background, although we'll have to see how they play. The fact that you got to keep your commander on the battlefield to have this work does make your commander a pretty juicy removal target. Like, commanders are already high value removal targets, and then when your commander also has these background abilities stapled to it, it might make your commander too much of a target for removal. So we'll have to wait and see how that actually plays out in practice. But in a counter deck, I think Master Chef, actually a really solid background. Speaking of background commanders, we also got a pretty sweet bear in Wilson Refined Grizzly, who is just living his best life out in the woods. 2 mana, 2/2 Bear Warrior Legend. It can't be countered. It has Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Ward 2, and you get to choose a background, so you'd be a multicolor deck. So this is the best Grizzly Bear of all time, although it's not the best Grizzly Bear commander. I think if you want to play Bear Tribal, the best commander is still a Eula Queen among bears. Like, a Eula's just an incredibly powerful legend for a Bear Tribal deck. Wilson certainly will show up in a Eula deck. It's kind of a lot of stats on there. You can do Voltron shenanigans. The upside, I think, of Wilson is because of the background thing, you can be multicolor bears. While like 99% of bears in Magic are mono green, there are a few reasons to be other colors. Bears of Lijara, for example. Nice flavor card in Simic. Grizzly Ghoul would push you towards Golgari maybe, or Phantasmal Bear. So we don't really have a good multicolor bear commander, and Wilson can be that thanks to the background thing. As far as what to pair this with, other than just pairing it with whatever color you want access to have a multicolor, dual color bear deck, kind of cute with Raised by Giants. Raised by Giants gonna make your Wilson into a 10/10 Vigilance, Reach, Trample, Ward, can't be countered. So maybe there's like mono green Wilson Giant Voltron. It sounds like a pretty fun deck that could be pretty sweet to put together. So I'm excited to try that out. We'll have to see. I don't know if it'll actually be that good, but a 10/10 Wilson seems like a real threat. So Wilson, pretty cool bear commander. I don't think it's a Eula good. I think that's still the old standby if you want to build Bear Tribal, but having access to other colors and background shenanigans is a nice little upside here. We also got a new uncommon background commander in Safana Calamaport Killer, a new black 3 mana 3/2 with Menace. It says, at the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, create a treasure token. If you've completed a dungeon, get 3 of them instead. And of course, it's choose a background, so you can have a background as your second commander. So the thing I wanted to mention about this, and I don't think this is actually a super strong card, but it gives us an excuse to talk about initiative one more time, because I realized, got a little more information about how this actually works, and the way I described it yesterday was not 100% correct. So I thought that initiative was essentially just dungeons with a different name, but it's actually dungeons with a different name that's also the Monarch. So how this works is almost exactly like the Monarch. Once the initiative starts going, there's going to be an initiative token, just like the Monarch, and once you take combat damage from a creature, that player is going to steal the initiative. They're going to start venturing through the Undercity, and then when they take combat damage, it shifts around. So it's kind of like Monarch, except rather than draw a card every turn, it's going to be everyone progressing through these dungeons. So it's definitely more fun than I thought it was. I thought it was just dungeons with a different name, essentially, but really it's Monarch versions of dungeons, and Monarch is one of my all-time favorite multiplayer mechanics. It's just such a fun mechanic, so I'm really actually much more excited about Initiative now that I actually understand how this works. Hopefully Wizards puts an article up kind of going more in-depth or some reminder text somewhere, because it's not exactly how it seems. As far as Safana, though, I mean, it's okay. We did get a new background that doubles up your dungeon room triggers, so kind of dungeon Amonicon. So if you want to go like Demir dungeons, you can play Dungeon Delver to go along with Safana, and we'll have to see. I'm sure we're going to get more support for this mechanic as we go along. But Safana itself, at first I was like, okay, you can put it in a treasure deck maybe, but I don't know a treasure deck that's also venturing through dungeons. And if Safana is like your only card that has initiative, you're not likely to progress through dungeons super fast and actually get all the treasures. So I don't know if it's actually that good of a card, but the initiative mechanic is a lot better than I thought. We also got Erinis Gloom Stalker, another uncommon commander, 3 mana 3/3 halfling ranger with death touch, and when it attacks you get to return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it's another background card. So this is kind of like a weird twist on Ramanop Excavator or Crucible of Worlds. If you can play this and keep attacking with it every turn, you're essentially ramping every turn. You're getting an extra land drop. In some ways it's better than Ramanop Excavator or Crucible of Worlds, because you're not actually using your land drop on Erinis. You're getting an extra land drop. You can still play one from your hand, and you're getting the one from the graveyard. On the other hand, you got to be able to keep attacking with a 3 mana 3/3. Death Touch does help. It makes it a little less likely to be blocked, but still, it's just a 3 mana 3/3. I think as far as pairings with a background, Criminal Pass seems kind of sweet. A good way to give Erinis menace and make it big. Plus, Erinis cares about graveyards, and Criminal Pass pumps based on creatures in graveyard. So maybe there's some land graveyardy style deck here with Erinis and Criminal Pass together. The other place I think this will definitely show up is in the 99 of some land-based decks like Gitrog Monster or Lord Windgrace is another Crucible of Worlds style effect to keep getting lands from your graveyard, keep those shenanigans going. So Erinis, for being an uncommon, actually seems like a pretty powerful card, if not as your commander, at least in the 99 of Lands Matters decks. We also got Vhal Candlekeep Researcher, and Vhal, pretty scary uncommon legend, 4 mana 2/3 with vigilance. It's a human wizard, and you can tap it to add a number of colorless mana equal to its toughness, but the mana can't be spent to cast spells from your hand. Also another background, so it could be a multicolor deck. So that's kind of cute with Raised by Giants. That's the first thing I thought. Make this into a 10/10 and it taps for 10 mana. The question is, if you can't use the mana to cast cards from your hand, what are you going to use it on? And the answer is, there's actually a bunch of options. You can use it to cast cards from exile, maybe cards you steal with Tasha from your opponent's deck, or cards that you exile on your own with like Impulse Draw, for example. That's one option. You can use it to activate abilities, Helix Pinnacle, for example, any ability that's not being cast from your hand. You can cast cards from your graveyard, maybe a Savine deck or a Leer deck could take advantage of this. So it's gonna be an interesting card to build around. Definitely gonna have to plan for what you can spend the mana on. There's also some infinite combos here. Umbra Mantle, for example, Sword of the Perrunes. If you can get these on Vhal, you can just keep tapping and untapping it, making an increasing amount of mana with the ability of the equipment itself. Umbra Mantle also going to make it infinitely big, so maybe you can one-shot someone, and then you can take and spend that mana on, I don't know, leveling up your Helix Pinnacle or something. It's worth pointing out, though, Umbra Mantle I think is the better of the two. Sword of the Perrunes, it does work, but if I'm understanding how this works correctly, Sword of the Perrunes says, as long as the equipped creature is tapped, tapped creatures get +2/+0. As long as it's untapped, untapped creatures get +0/+2. I think how this will work, though, since you have to tap Vhal to pay for its mana adding ability, I think it's going to see itself as a tap creature. So its power is going to be pumped rather than its toughness. So essentially it's going to tap to add 3 mana and then untap for 3 mana. So you're going to need one additional piece of equipment or additional pumping to actually go infinite with it. Umbra Mantle, on the other hand, just straight up infinite. You tap it, you untap it for 3, it gets +2/+2. So the next time you tap Vhal for 5 and then untap it for 3, and then you tap it for 7 and untap it for 3, make a massive creature, make all the mana, figure out a way to win somehow. Another way to take advantage of this is turning your fake mana into real mana. Second time this spoiler season. In 2 days, we've talked about Cascading Cataracts. Starting to think maybe this is a card that we should be picking up because it sounds like it's synergizing with a lot of things. But Cascading Cataracts has an ability where you can pay 5 to make 5 mana of any combination of colors. Well, Vhal, you can use its mana to activate the ability on Cascading Cataracts, and then you kind of filter your mana that can't be used to cast spells from your hand in a mana that can be used to cast spells from your hand. So another easy staple for a Vhal deck. So Vhal actually seems like one of the more powerful in combo-centric uncommon commanders we've seen in a while, and it could be good in the 99 of a bunch of different decks. Anyway, that's all for our daily Commander Legends 2 Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers for today. So what do you think? Which card is your favorite? What do you build around? What do you add into your decks? Let me know in the comments, everyone. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more Commander Legends Battle for Baldur Gate spoilers. So until then, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.